Hello everyone and welcome to yet another day in this The Clown Decade, the decade where things are only going to get worse before they get better. And if you would like to keep up with all things Clown Decade, please do subscribe to the channel and of course become a channel member. Right, today's video is quite a simple one. JimmyTheGiant, known internet leftist who used to do parkour videos and then dipped his toe into politics and became the most mainstream leftist I think I've ever seen in my life, has thrown together a video asking himself, have I been radicalised again? Because he did a video a while ago, which to be fair I've never actually seen, effectively making the point that he was a sort of Jordan Peterson bro, I don't think he'd ever go as far as to say he was an Andrew Tate fan, but was certainly in those circles and, well, taking on points. And as it happens, he's gone the complete opposite way now, which is more common than you'd think. There are an awful lot of people who jump between being an avid communist and then an avid neo-fascist. And, well, we're going to go through whether JimmyTheGiant really has radicalised himself or whether, frankly, as I'm going to throw out right now, reckon that he's just as politically mainstream as the left are at the moment, in that he will defend absolutely every mainstream left-wing talking point you hear from The Guardian and other left-wing outlets, while having absolutely nothing interesting to add to the conversation whatsoever. So I'm going to have to do the heavy lifting of the entertainment for this video, but I'm quite used to that reacting to Jimmy, so with that, let's take it away.
You lot know I've been on a bit of a political journey in my time, from Tommy Robinson rallies, appearing in a Nico video. Now I'm an official soyed out wokey.
Well, I mean, your words, not mine, but I will be interested to see what put you off Tommy Robinson. I'm no Tommy Robinson fan, by the way, but I have to say that I don't think he's wrong for going on about the grooming gangs. I think he's wrong because he, certainly in recent years, has been quite liberal with the truth, we'll say, and there's plenty of other documentaries that go through Tommy Robinson's claims from a right-wing perspective to say basically he's useless, because you could just go through court documents and things like that to see where he's not exactly telling the truth in, say, his Silence documentary. But anyway, I don't think he's going to go through that, unfortunately. Anyway, he explains the old video about escaping the alt-right pipeline and, well, says this.
At the time, landing as a social democrat.
Yeah, as I say, literally the most mainstream left-winger you could ask for. This is the type of person, by the way, whose politics are basically entirely within the remit of the Greens, the Lib Dems, even the Tories, by the way, Labour, of course, as well, but votes Green because they think that that's radical change. In reality, what the Greens want is exactly what we have now, but putting the foot down on the accelerator even more than Labour have. And the only reason Labour have put their foots on the brakes is because they don't want to be the ones who crash the country.
But that was a year ago. And boy oh boy has the world changed.
Yeah, there have been multiple escalations around the world. Venezuela, of course. Iran, of course, is the most recent one as well, though I'm pretty sure you made this video before that really took off. And I suppose that was done before Reform actually managed to win a whole load of seats at council elections and are likely to win them again this year. But I'd love to know what you mean specifically by that.
A lot of things I believed even a year ago have basically been proven wrong. Not only that, making more and more videos delving into these topics deeper and deeper, I have also educated myself further.
Oh man, the problem with your videos, as I've gone through with plenty of times before, is that you just have completely made up statistics in them. Like, I mean, completely just makes up statistics to try and disprove right-wing talking points. Beyond that, yeah, you have been wrong about a lot of things, but I'd like to know why that has made you go more left-wing. Because the problem is with an awful lot of the world, a lot of places are just too left-wing. America was under Biden, okay, fair enough, we've got Trump there now, but, you know, right-wingers don't exactly like tariffs. And to be honest with you, right-wingers have certainly not been on board with what's going on in Iran. Venezuela, different story, by the way, so fair enough there. But, I mean, you look at Britain and you think Labour are too right-wing? Yeah, by the way, that's just mainstream left-wing opinion, by the way. You're not radical, you're just part of the mainstream.
My personal life things have changed, and I feel like I have definitely landed on a different position now than then. So in this video, we will explore, have I become radicalised?
I do feel like it needs to be pointed out. Radicalised or not, I don't really care here. You've certainly been Americanised. Radicalised has an S in it in British English. It does not have a Z. And I am almost certain you would pronounce that Z too. I want to point that out because I reckon at some point in this video he's going to bring up Americanization, as he has done before, and which I have gone through. And I need to point it out every time. The left are far more Americanized than the right. Everyone's Americanized to some degree. But the left certainly are more susceptible to this, and, you know, small things like this, how you spell words, is actually quite an insight into that. I'm sure that Jimmy would spell colour with a U, but you really need to understand putting Zs in words like radicalised really does not help the case that it's the right being Americanised rather than the left. It's just not true. Beyond that, I bet he'd say patriot instead of patriot. I know that's something that I've been told off for in the past months, but again, on my defence, everyone's been Americanised to some degree.
Okay, so this time last year, I'm living in the UK, and I got to the point where I actually wanted to leave Britain.
Damn, and you had the means to? I'm not being funny, that literally puts you in like the top 20% of people your age in Britain. Like, not everyone can leave.
I was making so many depressing videos about the decline of Britain that I found myself applying for my Irish passport, and I was going to get the fuck out of here.
Oh, that's so typical. I know quite a few people who have got Irish passports simply to leave the country. Again, not a radical position, by the way.
But then, I had one day out in a town known as Brighton. So jump forward to now, your boy is living in the capital of Wokistan. I got my Antifa membership card. This is pretty much as predictable as I could be. Yes, I moved to Brighton.
Yeah, I mean, I think your quote-unquote radicalisation goes a bit further than that. Frankly, a lot of YouTubers get audience captured. That's another thing that happens. Oh, I'm getting lots of money for doing these videos. I must be doing something right. Yeah, if all you care about is money, yeah, you are doing something right for that. Problem smashes in there, though. All it makes you want to do is go on that road further. And again, this road is just going left-wing mainstream. You know, it's making you completely concur with not everything Labour are doing, obviously, but all of the worst parts Labour are doing: abortion till birth, banning cryptocurrency donations because quote-unquote foreign interference. Will they say anything about Commonwealth people being able to vote in Britain? Direct foreign interference? Of course not, because this is the mainstream left-wing view. And if you want to see what that's like, go to Brighton, which, to be fair, is a nice town.
And I will get into that more in a bit, but I want to talk about how just simply living here, this environment, this change of environment, has genuinely completely reshaped a lot of my feelings I had about Britain, the current state of Britain, and like the feeling of decline in this country.
Yeah, I'm not particularly surprised that moving to a really nice area that you're able to afford, because, let's face it, audience capture on YouTube is actually a very good way to try and make money, has made you feel better about Britain. Guess what? The rest of the country would quite like this. I'd also like to point out at this point that if you look at the ONS map of identities and all that, it's a very, very British area. 84% British. So, yeah, this guy moved from an area of London to Brighton, going from a relatively diverse area to a less diverse area. Jimmy has literally taken part of white flight and will pretend that that's not a phenomena.
So for me to explain this to you, I really need to talk about the town I grew up in, Dunstable.
To be fair to Jimmy here, not the most diverse village, town, whatever, in Britain. However, it does neighbour Luton, which, of course, is not an area that has a massive amount of people identifying as British, certainly compared to Dunstable and certainly compared to Brighton. And just to be clear, I'm not one of these people that says, oh, if everyone identified as British, that I'd be silver bullet, all problems solved. What it is worth pointing out, though, is that there does certainly seem to be correlation between areas that are more diverse and also areas where people will point to as problem areas.
Dunstable is kind of like the slightly better behaved brother of Luton. If Luton got life in jail, Dunstable got an ASBO.
That's not slightly better behaved. Like, you go to jail for life for multiple murders. You get an ASBO for being a bit of a yob in the streets one too many times.
And it's these two towns, Dunstable and Luton, that if you look at them in the past, they were once thriving. They were nice places. I mean, look at that. That's not bad. And then jump forward to now. It's a little bit bleak.
It's strange seeing the left-wing version of the type of thing that Otto English absolutely hates. Oh, didn't you know that living in the 50s was absolutely horrible for everyone and every woman was on antidepressants and actually every man, husband, father, whatever was gay, secretly, blah, blah, blah. Yet when left-wingers have the exact same nostalgia, it's just, you know, less race-based, suddenly that's a good thing. Everyone has nostalgia for Britain being a better place. There is nobody who thinks, or barely anybody, I shouldn't say nobody, who thinks that Britain in 2026 is better than Britain in, say, 2005. Despite the massive leaps in technology we have, everyone can afford a massive TV these days. There's just clearly something missing, and nobody's actually quite able to put their finger on what it is, because I think it's multiple things at once. There's more than just the fact that Luton and Dunstable will have been pretty much entirely white British at that point in time. There's more to it than just the high street's a bit more bustling. There's more than markets exist. And because multiple areas have been attacked by the British state, let's say, in these areas for multiple decades, people can't really put it all into one box, and it frustrates people because it is more than one thing causing issues here. Part of it's immigration, part of it's terrible tax regimes, part of it's complete stagnant wages and wage compression, part of it's the mad benefit system now. Councils can't afford anything because of that. And that's probably only touching upon the issues we have in the country. Hence the whole damn thing needs reform. And again, you're not radicalised for thinking this. Everyone thinks it. The problem with the left wing is that they want to continue the revolution that ruined all this. That's the mainstream view, again, as I say, and that's the view that Jimmy has here.
Luton, unfortunately, has a very bad reputation. It's infamous. It's home to Tommy Robinson, the EDL, Andrew Tate. It is a town that has a few problems.
Luton is a town that has a few problems, and who does he bring up? People who point out the problems with Luton along with him. Except they've mentioned something that you haven't, which is that Luton was home to grooming gangs, which Tommy Robinson got famous for pointing out. Which, that is a part of Tommy Robinson I have absolutely no problem with, by the way. So it'll be interesting to see if Jimmy actually points that part out, because again, that's a result of poor immigration policy and, well, police taking, let's say, the Race Relations Act a bit too to heart.
Dunstable specifically was one of the worst hit towns by the recession. When I was young, my experience of Dunstable as a town, as a community, was just a bit rough. And this, when you're a young kid growing up, this has an effect on you.
No, yeah, I imagine it'd be really depressing. You're limited in what you can go out and do. And to be fair, thinking back to my time as, an adolescent, you were kind of limited in what you could do anyway in the high street. Rarely did I actually have that much pocket money. And, well, to be honest, I preferred to go to local parks or, well, frankly, stay at home and play games anyway. But, well, to be fair, not having the option of going to town to spend your money isn't great, but, you've got Luton next to you, which was not as badly hit as Dunstable.
With shops, there's at least 37 empty shops in Dunstable, and that's made a huge difference to us because there's not worth coming to Dunstable.
Instead of growing up and going to the town and enjoying that, what me and my friends did was instead play video games.
Yeah, not being funny, but same. And I did not have a town that was massively hit as badly as Dunstable by the financial crash. And again, the town centre isn't the only place you can go. There's parks, pretty much every park has at least some football posts. There were definitely other options than just stay at home, play video games, and go to town. To do what? Go to a cafe, sit on a bench? This is what I mean. Even though I had a decent town centre near me, what can you do if you don't have money, which you don't have much of when you're young?
Eventually, as we got a little bit bigger, we would start going out to the woods. Climbing trees, building cool shit, setting fire to things.
Okay, this is now more reflective of what I remember from childhood.
And as I got older still, we got into the sport of parkour. And I've spoken about parkour before a little bit.
A little bit? What do you mean a little bit? It used to be your entire channel. There's nothing wrong with that. I just don't understand why you phrased it like, I used to talk about parkour a little bit. No, it was your channel for like 5 years. Anyway, he explains why parkour gave him a unique perspective on town centres.
If anything, the deader the town, the more neglected, the more brutalist the architecture, the better, because it meant that there was less people to get in the way.
Okay, yeah, understandable. I mean, you did what all kids did, which is, what can we do with the environment we've been given? And, well, in your case, you got a load of architects you could parkour over. I'm actually quite jealous of that, because I didn't really have that. But there were plenty of green fields to play football on. Again, you deal with what you're given.
So what parkour gave to me and many young people with little money was kind of like an alternative lifestyle. It became a way of like creatively reimagining public space.
Yeah, you get the idea of all this. What's your point?
I realised when I look back, I never really felt connected or like inspired by my local community. And in a way, growing up in a town like that, I kind of judged them.
Just to jump ahead on this point, I think that's a problem with a lot of boys especially, because realistically, where's your route to a good life in these towns? What can you do that's sort of an apprenticeship? What can you do that's going to be an obvious career path? Unfortunately, it's all to be a commuter, effectively. What's the point in living in Luton? Because it's quite easy to get on a train to go to London, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but then there's also this sort of war against nepotism, which to some extent I can understand, but at the same time, nobody under 40 is really expected to stay in the same job for more than 3 years, certainly not the same company, and if you do, it almost seems odd. I mean, no obvious route through life and having to do an awful lot yourself. I mean, I'm not against that. I mean, I still do have libertarian, Ayn Randian leanings, if you will, but not everyone's set up to deal with that. I can deal with it okay, but then you end up with people like JimmyTheGiant here who basically say, don't really get it. What is my route in life? And this is probably why you've got a load of aimless boys. Partially because, one, there's no obvious route of how to get to the top, but two, they're also just rejected from a whole load of jobs. In the past, certainly, it was in favour of women, non-white people, whatever, the DEI stuff. But now, we're getting 1 million graduates a year, and they're all fighting for about 10 to 20,000 jobs. I mean, I'm not being funny here, Jimmy, but we're about the same age. We had it really good in comparison. My older brother and sister had it even better. I mean, unfortunately, my brother lost his job in the financial crash. But my God, if you take inflation into account, I've not really had a raise. And an awful lot of people feel the same way due to wage compression. But this is all going off topic. I mean, it's not unusual to not have a very strong connection as a young person to your community because, well, a lot of young people have a bit of a spark to go on an adventure. And I've sort of seen this in my own brother, who went to London for a decade or so. And now all he wants to do is just move. He just wants to stay near the entire family. And everyone's really happy about that. But, it took a decade of living away to sort of get that.
If my mum had to drag me to do some food shopping, I would see all the people there and they just looked like depressed old people plodding around a Sainsbury's. Or yeah, there were chavs sitting outside of the Tesco, or the same 5 locals sat in a rundown pub moaning about something they read in the Sun.
Okay, well, you say you used to judge them. The best thing to do to say that you've moved past judging them is not to say things like that.
For me as a young bruh, I didn't want to be that. I didn't see anything in that inspired me. And it's like that feeling of separation, like that adversarial nature to the local community, that I think, if I were to analyse my brain, is probably part of what led me to being a very anti-mainstream contrarian.
Well, I suppose when you were a fan of Jordan Peterson, you could, make that case. I guess now you've grown older, you've gone a lot more mainstream and followed Zach Polanski. I mean, again, completely normal for young men to go through this phase. Everyone's gone through it. You're not unique for that. But I suppose this isn't the worst introspection in the world.
Back in September, I made a video. It's called Britain's New Class War. And I read this book about the rise of the petty bourgeois.
Oh, God. Again, all this does is put him on the same ideological trajectory as someone like Andrew Marr. This doesn't make him that different to Blair.
This video really deepened my understanding of class. And I realised that by understanding class deeper, you actually start to understand what leads people to doing certain things.
Oh, God, this is going to be good. I'm so bored of class analysis. Can we move on now? We've tried this for 200 years. What's it ended up with? 2026 Britain. No thanks, we need to move past it.
Why different people have different motivations, believe certain things, vote in a certain way.
Yeah, I don't think you could answer the question, why was Margaret Thatcher voted in 3 times? And I think class analysis actually gets in the way of that. It certainly gets in the way today. Class doesn't really tell you how people vote anymore. The biggest thing still at the moment is age.
And it was reading this book where I, for the first time, understood my actual class background. So I grew up in a family that you could label as petty bourgeois. That means just like a small capitalist.
Thank you. Yes, that is basically translating petty bourgeois to English. My God, I'd love to know where he's going with this. Are you judging your own family for having it too good now?
My dad was self-employed. He fit carpets, he was in charge of his own work.
Right. It just goes through a whole point of his dad was a tradesman and could afford a decent living, but not one that's going to make him a millionaire or anything like that. So again, I just want to get to his point. What is this introspection about? What's the whole point of it? You've gone from, my town wasn't great, I wanted more, and now it seems that you're just saying, my family wasn't, it was good, he doesn't want to insult them, but it wasn't the best, and I wanted more. Which, by the way, he has.
But you see, it's growing up in this very particular petty bourgeois type family where you are installed a certain set of beliefs and attitudes that are quite particular.
It makes you a Maggie Thatcher fan. That's what his complaint's gonna be.
Things like self-sufficiency. You do everything yourself. No one's gonna come and help you. There's a real admiration of hard work.
Yeah. Again, this is a good thing. And God, I know what he's gonna go into. This leads to atomization of individuals. No, because to get work, you have to actually talk to other people to actually get hired. What are you talking about? I mean, the problem is here is that I am jumping to the end of all his arguments because they're all just so predictable. Why are they so predictable? Because I've been arguing against this mainstream nonsense for 8 years. And he's just made another video on it.
Almost like glorifying it to a degree. And there's also a very real appreciation for the value of money. You don't spend frivolously, you make sure you turn all the lights off. They were very frugal. They wouldn't waste things.
What is wrong with any of this? Listen, I know people who spend frivolously when they don't have the means to. It doesn't end well at all.
And also, I would say there was this sort of feeling of wanting to prove others wrong. You were kind of proud that you were able to go at it yourself on your own. You didn't need other people's help.
Yeah, again, this is a good thing. It can obviously go too far in that, you can be destitute and be too proud to offer help when you're homeless or something, fair enough. But your dad wasn't like that, the Chuckle Brothers aren't like that, and Del Boy isn't like that.
And look, I'll be totally honest, these characteristics have both good and bad in them. Like, self-reliance and confidence are great. Being ambitious, being entrepreneurial also can be good.
Wow, you are so radical. It's like, come on, where are you going with this?
But what I have learned since getting a bit older is that these values do have a built-in limitation. And also, growing up in the 2000s, I grew up on a shitload of basically American propaganda.
Well, I was right about the Americanization. But yeah, unfortunately, the problem is in the modern world, we've gone way too far the other way. And you can't just blame people for wanting to be scroungers for this. Young people, for instance, they just can't get jobs because they just don't exist. But there's loads of people who just openly say, yeah, I'm on benefits because I can't be bothered working or because it's easier than work. And the funny thing about that is that a lot of the time on top of that, they're doing cash-in-hand work anyway. But it's more vocational stuff like selling stuff on Etsy or Vinted or whatever. Basically being some sort of fashion or art trader. But the problem is that because it's all cash in hand and hidden from the tax man, they get a load of benefits on top. Again, not a bad thing, but what's ended up happening is that this entrepreneurial mindset has actually moved from how do I do the best for a business to how do I get as much money from from benefits as possible, while also hiding other incomes I may have. Everyone does this. Why do you pay every tradesman in cash? Because they can easily hide it and not have to pay VAT.
Films, TVs, the people I idolized were always these self-made go-getters. I looked up to Eminem, Tyler the Creator, Skrillex, all these people who sort of came from nothing and built something amazing.
I mean, I'm not being funny, but you've basically done the same thing with your channel. You hit a sort of target ceiling talking about parkour, because only so many people are interested in that, and instead got on this wave of, effectively trying to be the British Sam Piker. Except you're actually more intelligent than him, but that's not actually that difficult. And it's just led to audience capture. Because the thing is, what's he actually saying here at all? What is his point? I'm not even sure how far through the video we are, but I'm just getting frustrated because there's nothing to latch on to. That's why I've cut a load of it out, to be honest. This might only be a one-parter. That's how little he is saying.
But these things, they do have like a built-in limitation to them, as it can lead you to believing that you can only ever rely on yourself.
Wow, I can't believe it. Every value has a toxic version of it. Who would have thunk? We're moving on. I can't be bothered with this.
You can become a bit skeptical or maybe suspicious of the idea of like trusting in society or believing that your community can like collectively solve shared problems.
Never mind, he's actually trying to make a point now. In my experience, I don't really think this is true. I think the problem is that a lot of people just outsource what needs to be done to the council. Oh, potholes need to be filled, or I'll call the council. To be fair, on that point, that actually is something that they need to do. But you want to set up a May Day fair or something? Council's got to get involved, or someone else can do that. Oh, we need volunteers for it. Yeah, but I don't really want it. It's not so much that nobody believes community spirit is a thing, it's just a lot of people are very lazy on it. And I think this is downstream of things like, charities now all to do with the government, foreign aid. The council should be making houses for people to live in if they're homeless and things like that. And so it just puts a mindset on people of, oh, I pay my taxes, I do my charity work, nothing else needs to be done. And sorry, charity is a lot more than just giving money away, or in tax's case, taking it off you.
The sort of every man for themselves mentality can just make you a bit sceptical.
Well, he was making a new point for about half a second, and now once again he's swung back to values can have toxic versions of it. Great, come on, let's move on. Anyway, he goes on to mention that his own dad would. So he concludes by saying that living in a declining town and having a very entrepreneurial father who avoided spending frivolously because he was self-employed and needed rainy day funds, ends up saying,
both of these things in part shaped me and eventually would bleed into my politics.
Yeah, that's like everyone's experience. How people grow up bleeds into their politics, fine. But please explain what your politics actually are, because, we're 10 minutes into this video and I'm still not sure what the point of it actually is. Ugh. Get on with it.
As an OG internet baby, I grew up on them conspiracy theories, man. 9/11 was an inside job, was just, that was my version of Bluey.
I hate to tell you this, but you never actually grew out of that. I'm just letting you know. I have been through your videos plenty of times to know you still have this mindset of just pig-headedly ignoring facts that are presented to you to just make stuff up to fit your preconceived notion of what's actually going on. That's how you work.
And I think it was this sort of, this contrarian nature mixed with being a bit overly confident that led me to choosing, when I got of age, to not go to university. I didn't see any merit in going to uni because I just knew exactly what I wanted to do and how I was going to do it.
Okay. Was that just make the YouTube channel? My memory's a bit fuzzy on this because I watched it a while ago, but in a conversation between JimmyTheGiant and Gary's Economics, I'm pretty sure he just admitted that he couldn't get a job for some time and basically lived off his parents' money while making his YouTube channel, which obviously eventually exploded. I don't think the guy's actually ever had a job, so I'd love to know what his idea for the future was. Because if it was just YouTube, okay, don't get me wrong, I've had ambitions there too, but I made sure I actually had a job before I started this. Because even I was self-aware enough to know that, only a few people break through to having a successful career in it.
I realise now that this mix of being overly self-assured, combined with the fact that I was a contrarian and I just had natural curiosity in the world, these things became a dangerous mix. Because I rejected education and university, I had no deep foundational knowledge of history, of politics, of sociology. No, I just had fucking random YouTube videos.
I hate to tell you this, but I know you went down the conspiracy rabbit hole, but you probably actually have a better understanding of the real world doing that. I just want to say. Again, has he been radicalised? No, he's just gone to mainstream university thought. That's what he's going toward here. I mean, you don't get deep philosophical or historical understanding from university. How do I know? My girlfriend's literally doing a course right now that I help her with. I'm sorry, some of it's good, don't get me wrong, but the sociology stuff's just awful. It's just awful. I mean, also, it's entirely dependent on what course you do. You don't learn about history and philosophy if you do physics or maths or any STEM subject for that matter, but possibly even business studies. Like, there's a whole problem we have at the moment where basically nobody thinks it's worth going to university because everyone's realised, wow, half the people who are 18 or, 25, whatever, have been to university and they're all idiots. Why do you think it's a good thing? Answer, because he doesn't. He doesn't really think this. This is just regurgitating stuff that he knows gets him attention. It's stuff that he knows will get him a pat on the head, so to speak. It could get him an interview on Navarra Media, who knows? He's just kind of saying this stuff. Oh, I lacked in education because I didn't go to university. In the credentialist sense, definitely true. However, you can actually come out dumber from university depending what course you do. But he's not going into he's not really going into any detail of what he did or what course he actually would have done alternatively. So we can't really conclude anything.
I was relying on 4-hour documentaries about the Rockefellers by user Trufar567. Without having foundational knowledge, I had no real ability to distinguish good ideas from bad ideas.
Dude, you have this free site called Google. What do you mean? If you had YouTube, you had Google. You could have cross-referenced this stuff. I used to do it all the time. I see people on Twitter, by the way, do it in real time. There was someone in my replies who was like, oh, there's no way Scotland tried to take over Panama. Why the hell would they do that? And then 5 minutes later, he replies saying, oh my god, that's true. What the hell? You can literally find plenty of sites that debunk Holocaust denial, debunk 9/11 conspiracies, debunk the Earth is flat nonsense. There's so much stuff out there. Like, just because you didn't do research doesn't mean that you can get to a sensible, say, political position or opinion on some time in history, let's say, without going to university. You don't have to go to university to have these opinions. You still didn't go to university. You've ended up with university opinions. That's kind of the kill shot here.
And as I say before, this skepticism I had developed towards like mainstream status quo culture meant that I was primed to be overly open to any idea that was contrarian to the norm. And I was hook, line and sinker for other people who would claim to be like an anti-establishment figure.
Yeah, the whole point of this video is basically, I'm embarrassed about this time in my life. I am now overcompensating for that. He's basically trying to say, no, I'm not radical, I'm actually normal. And you know what? I actually agree. You are well within the left-wing mainstream. You do reports for The Guardian, for God's sake. Of course you're mainstream.
So I ended up in this place where I thought Trump was cool and Tommy Robinson, Farage. For a good period of time, I was definitely one of these right-wing contrarians.
Case in point, he's just embarrassed about this time of his life and he's trying to make up for it. That's been obviously what JimmyTheGiant has been doing with his YouTube channel for about 4 years. And again, I know people that are like this. It doesn't make him particularly unique, but again, what's the point of this? Well, Brexit wasn't as great as I thought it was. Trump one was actually not great. So what do? Well, I feel like I have to believe in something, so I'm going to go completely along with the left-wing mainstream that I was criticising for years. Why? Because it's cool. There's not really much more to it. It's because I don't want to call him a grifter necessarily, but it is because it grew his channel. That's why he's like this.
And I think in that last video that I made talking about my political journey, I was able to analyse it in some degree, you know, why I was drawn to it. But I never really realised just how important things like your class position and your environment that you live in, how important these things are in installing lessons, expectations and beliefs into people.
But see, the class thing's still really irritating me because, again, it's more to do with upbringing, and a lot of people in Britain have had very, very similar upbringings, despite being at complete opposite sides of the country. Because, you know, everyone had the same TV channels, everyone has the same Netflix, everyone has the same video games. But you go sort of to the parents' generation, where there were like 2 channels on TV, it's a hell of a lot more to do with your local community, because that's where your entertainment and your upbringing came from. So class divides, they've kind of been shattered, if they were ever there in the first place, over the past few decades. The big problem we have here is that you have quite a uniquely historical analysis of, you know, 19th century Britain, Victorian era, which is where all this comes from. You know, it's all from Marx. And we're still trying to apply it in 2026, and it just doesn't work. Massive way you can tell, voting patterns. There's massive gender divides, there's massive age divides, class divides, practically non-existent. I'm not going to go as far as say they're non-existent, but there's certainly less emphasis on that than there was, I don't know, in the 1950s, 60s, say. So it's just, this has made it into a pointless video. Why is he saying this stuff? Basically because it's cool in left-wing circles, or we need to talk about class. Why? Oh, because Hannah Spencer just won as a Green candidate in Gorton and Denton, and we said she's working class. She owns 2 properties. Both of them are worth over £1 million. No. Absolutely not. She is not working class. That's absurd.
But not just those things, but also recognizing that when you're young and you have lots of insecurities about your future, how you're going to get to the things that you're aspiring toward. And it's that can lead you to seeking out ideologies that give you what feels like concrete answers for the confusing world you're growing up into.
Okay, yeah, sure. I mean, most young people just don't care, by the way, but what you've done is found one ideology, been a bit embarrassed about that, and now you're overcompensating by, as I say, going really far to the mainstream left. That's what you're doing. That's what the Greens are, and that's why you love them. But I mean, we all saw it on trigonometry. You don't know anything. This is your problem. You don't know anything. You only know how to regurgitate things and then have a go at people. You've not changed. You're still the same person you were when you were a conspiracy theorist. It's just somehow you've co-opted that to actually just be mainstream now instead. Why? Because Trump won again and Reform are winning now. That's the only reason you're like this.
Growing up in a town that feels in decline, into a society that tells you need to have a really good job, you need to matter, you need to have status, the nice wife, the car, the house, these sort of lessons you are being taught by media, by culture that you need to aspire toward for you to matter in this world and for you to be happy. And I think this is why I ended up such a firm believer in like free market capitalism.
Well, no, the reason you were like that is because it was contrarian. You've already admitted that. You didn't really have a belief behind it. Beyond that, free market capitalism gave you your upbringing, which, as you said before, you're quite happy with it. You were quite happy with it. Also, free market capitalism got you a YouTube channel, so you're still in favour of it. You know, free market capitalists are still fine with a social safety net and some benefits. It's just they've gone overboard. Problem with you is that, anyone who says they're a free marketeer, I have to go against them now. Again, you're no different to what you were saying when you were 20. You're just on the mainstream side now rather than the ever-growing centre-right, which hopefully will be mainstream someday soon, but we're not nowhere near there. We are quite near there, actually, closer than we've ever been in my lifetime, and hopefully we have another renaissance of sort of 80s to 90s entrepreneurship. Please, that'd be really nice. I would quite like to be an entrepreneur now. I think I've been in business enough to know what I'm doing.
In part, I kind of needed to believe in the idea of meritocracy. If I'm being told that I need to have all these things or be all these things in order to, matter in the world, then believing the concept of meritocracy, if you just work hard and are really smart and you will achieve things, that will get you to where you need to be. Then you grasp to these ideas as like a kind of life jacket.
Again, this is just cope and see. No, you were just ambitious. You were ambitious and you wanted it to be true that if you're ambitious, you can have successes. I don't know, you seem to have not realised that that also includes a whole bunch of failures. And I mean, I'm not being funny. Again, you are literally a person who proves that actually, yes, if you put enough work into something, you can have a big YouTube channel that allows you to afford living in Brighton. You're living proof of that. Now, on the meritocracy front, do you deserve it? I'd question it, because I don't think you're particularly clever. And again, everyone saw that with the trigonometry drama. But you are personable. You have a good editor. You do have a style that people do quite like. It's not my cup of tea, but I understand that other people like it. And again, it's fine. You shouldn't be embarrassed to be ambitious. You shouldn't be embarrassed to be an entrepreneur and believe that actually there is an ideal with free market capitalism that can work for an awful lot of people. Just because it doesn't work for everyone doesn't mean you can't help them out. And there's ways to fix the holes there. That's why it's not good to be an ideologue for any ideology. It's not good, but it's fine to lean toward the principles of ideologies with the understanding that none of them are perfect and all of them may need alternative ideas to plug some gaps. You can't do that. You still can't do that. That was made clear with the trigonometry debacle, which I don't think you've actually learned from. You apologised to save face, and that was it.
And this is, one of the reflections I've probably had since last year, where I probably had a deeper belief in the idea of argumentation and debate in changing people's minds. It definitely plays a role, it's important. But the role of class, like material influence and people's emotional state, their identity, their desire to be something particular, these things that make an identity cannot simply be rationalized out with argumentation.
Sorry, I have absolutely no idea what he's talking about here. What do you mean? Again, this is the problem with JimmyTheGiant. What's his video about here? I read about the petty bourgeoisie recently and class analysis, and I just want to make a video on it. I have no idea what his point is. What are you saying?
I really do not believe that humans are rational actors who, you sit down, present them all the information, and they'll pick the correct one.
Right, okay, yeah. I completely agree with that. You can just fast forward all these ideas, you just read The Righteous Mind. You don't change people's minds with argumentation straight away. What you need to do is present arguments and then let it basically stew in whoever you're talking to's mind, and eventually they have to basically argue themselves into your position. And believe it or not, people are quite against doing that, but it does happen a hell of a lot more often than you think. Hence people change their mind all the time.
I believe that we as humans often seek out ideologies, religion, as kind of things that give us a sense of stability and peace.
Kind of. I'm just going to be real with you. Most people don't really think about it too deeply. That's one hill you've got to get over. Two, the whole reason people seek it out is, for a sense of sort of shared community ideals, which then help in cooperating with other people in your local society, community, whatever. And this is why local churches were more than just houses of God. They were places where people would also congregate for social events, life events like weddings, have social events such as small fairs, games, things like that. This is what the church used to be. And then obviously as people have managed to get more entertainment systems in their own home, that's kind of died a death. And that has led to a lot of people now having their communities kind of move online, especially if you're young. That's exactly what's happened to me. Is it a bad thing? In ways. In other ways, it's a good thing. I know plenty of people who have married the people they've met through online communities. It's good in that sense. But it is leading a lot of people to now want to rediscover what can I actually do in my local communities now. It's a very good question, but another problem that a lot of young people have is that actually it does cost a bit of money to be involved in things like that. You want to go to the pub, £5 a pint. Screw that, says a lot of people, and now Gen Z don't drink. But now they're getting better jobs, they are drinking a bit more. So again, the age divide in income is not helping. There's always going to be an age divide, but the basic level of income you have now is obviously not affordable for getting houses like people used to, or apartments. Can you see what I mean by there's an awful lot of things wrong with Britain, and once you go down one rabbit hole, you have about 10 different other holes you can go down. I just picked one there, and I have to stop myself before I go down 10 more. But to get us back to the point, yes, people share religions and also just general shared ideas because it does give them a sense of community safety and allows for much easier cooperation.
To make sense of the world and give us a small feeling of control over the chaoticness of life.
You don't have control over ideologies. Ideologies are just something you basically subscribe to. When you go off piece of those ideologies, that's when you start having your own control over your ideas. And a lot of people who think about this do that. That's perfectly normal.
So to me, it makes a lot of sense why so many young guys get drawn towards red pill ideology.
Okay, that's a hell of a pivot. Go on.
Ultimately, people want to have relationships, right? And these guys, they might not start out hating women, but because they obviously want to feel love, but also status and respect from other men. And they're told so many times growing up that if you don't have these things, you're not a real man, you're a loser, you're a virgin. Then stumbling on something like the red pill that tells you to be a dominant alpha man, that will get you the babes.
Oh yeah, I completely think all that stuff's cringe. Pickup artists, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's like a teenager's dream. But by the time I was about 24, I started thinking, this is actually, nah, I don't want this. Let's just be a bit more normal, And it's not like all the ideas of the red pill space are wrong, but one thing that really did come out of that Louis Theroux documentary on them was effectively... these men actually do have stable lives, but they are just selling a complete and utter lie to not just young men, but also young women, managing OnlyFans and things like that, to basically grift and make money. Well, I remember the guy who was asked, how many kids do you have? Oh, I have loads. How many? Quite a few. How many? I have 2 with my wife. And, he's a guy whose whole internet persona is, I get all the babes, commit loads of infidelity, blah, blah, blah. No, he's just a perfectly fine, well-adjusted man who is selling poison to younger people because it makes him money and gives him a lifestyle he wants. There's a load of grifters on this side. And I think the red pill community has been sort of seen as that for some time. I know Andrew Tate was a bit of a problem in schools some years ago, but I think we moved past that now. I don't know, I'd have to ask teachers I know, but I've not heard complaints about Andrew Tate for ages. Adolescence already felt out of place when it came out because it felt like everyone was past this. But, the same thing was happening on the left. I remember 2012 to 2018 feminism. My God, there were girls going to university who were genuinely scared that they were likely to be raped because of the statistics that were being thrown out that were complete codswallop. Is that an ideology that's going to help with relations between men and women? you know, men are likely to rape you? I don't think so. So I think blaming this purely on the red pill community is a bit far-fetched. I mean, they're not good, but they're not the only ones to blame with a breakdown between gender relations, we'll call them, and it's partially the reason downstream of that why there's a big gender break between, especially in young people, of who they vote for.
Well, this can feel like a solution to that insecurity, to take you from where you are now to the place you want to be.
Yeah, the problem with this is that it's really obvious people who take this stuff on board are really insecure. Like, it's just really obvious. And they have a sort of checklist of things that they need to do. You know, oh, I need a girlfriend. Oh, I need to get married. Oh, now I need kids. I mean, you check on people who've been married recently who are quite young. I don't know. I don't want to name names necessarily. But they're probably going to be trying for babies really, really soon. Because at the end of the day, they see being a man as a checklist. And that is certainly downstream from this, and I can understand why JimmyTheGiant wants to move away from it, because I did too. But that doesn't mean you then have to go the complete opposite way. You don't have to be contrarian to that to be against it. Well, that's how Jimmy's mind works.
And it's not just guys. I think it's the same with hyper-individualistic girl boss capitalism.
Oh, see what I mean? Like, his framing is to just be completely contrarian. Oh, if I have to have a go at 2015 feminism, which is what he's actually having a go at here, he's going back to his roots. He's doing it in a woke way. Oh, you know, this is girl boss capitalism. No. No. You were against this because it wasn't capitalist. That's why you were contrarian to this at the time. Now you still believe in that stuff, but you need to keep your audience on side. Now I see what you're doing there. Stop it.
There are creators that sell young women this idea that pure self-sufficiency and isolation, doing everything alone, like that lone wolf mentality, this will grant them protection from dependence, vulnerability, and disappointment.
Well, yeah, the whole problem was that they didn't want women to get married because they saw it as coercive. Come on. For someone who was very much in this red pill space and apparently on the alt-right pipeline, you don't seem to understand the feminist arguments very well. Again, this wasn't capitalism, this was just misandry. Everyone remembers it, and everyone wants to move past it.
And the irony is, you know, say the red pill, is that in reality, women find it repulsive. Girl boss capitalism can make women very isolated.
I mean, yeah, this is just moving back round to his point of, oh, there's ideals that have a toxic version of it. Yeah, alright, you've gone through that, move on.
Whether these ideologies actually deliver fulfillment in people's lives is kind of irrelevant. What they do is provide like a playbook, like a framework for you to act. That sense of control, that you understand it, you know what you gotta do.
To be fair to him, he's right there. I mean, I have an issue with framing it as, oh, it's you having control. Maybe in a way it's you feeling like you have a control, but what it actually is it's just giving people a checklist for what they need to do. And society kind of just used to do that anyway. You know, you're expected to find a girl and get married to her. You're expected to provide for her. And, you know, she may have a part-time job or maybe has kids as well. You know, there are expectations there. And then they all disintegrated. And, well, the media tried to, find a way to get their own ideas into people's heads. And that's why you ended up with girl boss feminism. Which, again, he's critiquing here. He's actually being red-pilled on this, but he has to frame it in a woke way and call it capitalism because he's a coward.
At this point, these ideologies are just coping mechanisms.
Yeah, once again, that's true, but I don't think he's going to have enough introspection to realise that he's still got these coping mechanisms. Again, it's not a bad thing. Everyone has them. But I think the conclusion of this video is going to be, I'm above all this now, actually. I'm above all this by being in the mainstream ideology that's actually better than the red pill ideology because I don't hate women, despite the fact that it has caused an awful lot of the problems we see in today's world.
And this can be really tough, right? You know, somebody makes content where I like to go through arguments and debunk things.
Well, again, the problem is that you don't debunk anything. Again, the trigonometry interview brought that out of you. You just don't know anything. What you like to do is sit in front of a camera and perform. A lot of people like to do that. Again, it's not unique to you. But I'm getting really fed up with it because there's absolutely nothing new to learn from it.
And whilst I've become more aware of the idea of like identity, I don't think people are unchangeable, obviously. I do believe that people can be educated out of positions. Life experience can change people.
Yeah, okay, none of that, again, is controversial. Again, just read The Righteous Mind. It goes through all this and how to actually change people's minds. It's a very slow process done largely through friendly conversations.
But it is to understand how deeply ingrained some of these beliefs can be in people and why they can't just let it go even if it seems illogical.
I mean, that whole time he had clips of reform rallies and Nigel Farage and things like that. The thing is that, again, this is all entirely down to perspective. A lot of people, I'd argue more people, think that of the Greens, especially those who understand that the Greens are, well, leftism on steroids, leftism that we have been experiencing for some years. Like, you want all the worst parts of what has happened over the past couple of decades with a brick on the accelerator. You want what's been normalised to be even more normalised. No, thank you. You know, you got to the trans issue and then it all fell apart. Why is that? Because everyone on that side of the argument got complacent and you decided to stick with it.
And that is a big thing that I have learnt this year. You know, it wasn't just the fact that I changed my perspective through new information. That played a role, but I was in a position in my life, my career, to be open to taking new information.
What the hell are you talking about? What's actually changed? What opinions have actually changed? I have absolutely no idea here. Oh, I'm a bit more focused on class analysis now. You're always focused on class analysis. What are you talking about? I've gone through plenty of your videos. How are you not a social democrat, quote unquote? Are you now a democratic socialist? Is that what's different? Because believe it or not, there's basically no difference there. It's just a bit cooler to say democratic socialist now because that's what the Greens are. That's the only difference.
And I've become more aware of how difficult it can be to let go of certain ideas due to identity and someone's emotional state.
Again, just read The Righteous Mind, dude. Anyway, he's now getting back to the point. What was the point of any of this? We're nearly an hour in. I'm nearly ending this part. Just please make a point.
For a while, I was living in Milton Keynes.
Oh my god. Get on with it. Just get on with it.
It's not a declining town per se, but it's a very corporate, soulless town.
Yeah, quite famously, it was built as a new town that had basically 100% town planning behind, well, the design of the entire town. That's why it feels soulless, because it is the British bureaucrats' perfect idea of a town. So of course it's terrible.
Eventually, I would decide to leave the city built on efficiency, and I ended up in Brighton. And I have to admit, living in Brighton has completely changed my perspective on modern Britain.
What does any of this have to do with was I radicalised or not? Where are you going with this? This video is an hour. What's he said?
Brighton is just a beautiful place, right? It's vibrant. The buildings are colourful. There's artwork on all the buildings. It's by the sea. There's loads of nature. Architecture's incredible. There's endless cafes, restaurants, theatres.
Yeah, I've never been myself, but I have heard good things about Brighton. And yes, it is a city with history. I feel this same way about parts of Manchester. There's areas where they've just concreted over beautiful gardens, but, you know, there's still hidden gems.
And that feeling of just walking around this walkable town is amazing. This environment is what GB News is fear-mongering about. You know, the 15-minute city dystopia. Looks like hell, doesn't it?
The problem people had with the 15-minute city idea is that you would be fined if you went out of your neighbourhood in a car. That was people's problem with it. Everyone likes the idea of pedestrianised areas. People like the idea of dining al fresco. And they even quite like streets where, yeah, you can walk through it. A lot of city centres have that. People have a problem with being fined for having the audacity to drive your kids to school and having to pay extra to the council for it. That's where the problem came in. Oh, I love debunking ideas. He didn't even bother to look into why people had a problem with 15-minute cities. And again, what's your point here?
It's got this kind of relaxed atmosphere. Not everyone feels like they're rushing to their corporate job. People are sitting out in the streets. They're enjoying themselves.
Literally, all you are describing here is a Mediterranean town. Like, okay, yeah, fine, but you also do need the central hubs where people who are willing to work 80 hours a week can go to work 80 hours a week. Not everywhere has to be the same. I'm not saying that Milton Keynes is good, by the way. I'm comparing it to the City of London and obviously other major cities, which, again, have pedestrianised areas. And again, you're only seeing the people who don't happen to have jobs on these days. At the weekend, I wouldn't be shocked if it's even more vibrant.
And it was after living in this environment for a few weeks where I realised, my God, Britain is very divided.
I'm sorry, that's your point after all this? Am I radicalised or not? Oh, I realise that Britain's divided. Really? You've only just noticed?
Where I grew up in Dunstable is just one example of so many places in the UK that are just not improving.
Thank you for noticing, I guess. Yeah, that's why a lot of people are voting Reform. And also the Greens, as it turns out.
The towns are stagnant. If anything, they're in decline.
How has this guy been covering left-wing politics for like 4 years and only now just making a video on Britain's decline? What are you talking about? This is just common knowledge.
There is a feeling in lots of towns in the UK that their best days were behind them. And it's true, they were.
Yeah, but that doesn't need to remain true, does it? And also, you've got to ask these people, why do you feel it is in decline? Shops keep closing, and let's face it, in a lot of places, they will also say immigration's not been great.
Local pubs are shutting down. The industries that kept towns alive are sold off. High streets are derelict. They're just overrun by American corporate slop.
You're going to need to explain what you mean by corporate American slop there. I'm actually not sure what he's referring to. I look on my average high street and it's basically a bunch of barber shops, some vape shops, co-ops, Sainsbury's, you know, British institutions like that, the odd pub as well, and gambling shops. What the hell do you mean American corporate slop? I have no idea what you mean by that. American corporate slop at the moment is pretty much entirely on TV and to do with Amazon. The high street doesn't really have that, because the high street doesn't really have anything. Beyond that, I'd love to know what your answer is to the pub. Like, how do we bring the pubs back? Because I don't think the Greens have a policy really on that. One of the big issues is energy. We have the Green policy on energy right now, and it's terrible. So again, I don't know where you're going with any of this. Like, yeah, people want their pubs back. People want more vibrant town centres. What do you mean it's too Americanised? That would blow my mind. What the hell do you mean?
Fast food.
Fast food, I suppose, actually. You kind of have a point there, but again, people like it. People like KFCs and McDonald's. In fact, they're generally seen as the better option. I mean, the people who run the KFC knockoffs, they're generally seen as either run by people who shouldn't be here, or, frankly, as fronts, just as vape shops are. But at least I understand a bit more of what he means by American corporate slop. I didn't think of fast food chains. I suppose that's on me. But when it comes to anything else, I can't think of anything else that's American slop.
Even Milton Keynes, you know, whilst it's not economically doing bad, there's just this, hollow corporate feel to the place.
Yeah, well, Milton Keynes is quite unique in that it was one of the few towns that was specifically designed for efficiency by British bureaucrats. A lot of other places are just kind of, well, we'll think what architects think of the damn place and see what's best to build. I've not necessarily liked it in my area because they made a few glass monstrosities, but as time went on, they moved away from that and renovated the market hall, say, to be a vibrant little cafe area with a few shops too.
Everything in the town centre is just chain restaurants, low quality shit. Outside the town is just warehouses. There's no real soul to the place.
I don't think that's necessarily too different to the 50s, to be honest. The main difference being is that there will have been a bigger market. And obviously less shuttered windows, I suppose you can say as well, but you'd still have industry nearby. If anything, the industry was closer. Terrace houses generally were just made to be put next to factories, which was not good for the air quality. The actual problem here isn't that these things exist, it's that they're the only things that exist next to a load of rundown warehouses and shop fronts. Really, you need to revitalise them with investment, usually private.
And so, growing up, I'd always felt this feeling that nothing new and exciting was coming along. Nothing was breathing new life into places.
Oh yeah, that's definitely true. And if there was anything new, what would it be? The new iPhone? Oh, made by foreigners. What about new cars? Who really cares about Range Rovers and Jaguars these days? Well, Range Rovers, actually, people do care about that, to be fair, but neither of those examples are actually particularly affordable. Yeah, I do agree. Technology surprisingly feels like it's stagnated, and if there have been improvements, it's been, well, from outside of the UK. But even then, we are getting innovations in Britain. They just might not be as sexy as iPhones and things like that. I mean, Mouse, who obviously made the phone cases that were really, really safe, and I still use them to this day because I've never had a crack in my phone since buying their products. They supply the Mercedes team for Formula One with their backpacks because they're so safe and accessible. I mean, I know it's not as sexy as the new iPhone, but there are still entrepreneurial types operating within Britain, usually in London. The problem is that where are these things made? Well, they're all made in China. And okay, well, if we need to make warehouse and things like that in Britain, what are they usually for? Well, Amazon, things like that. I get it, but I really do need to see some sort of policy that's going to help with that. And I obviously don't see it with the Greens, and, well, Jimmy's a Green Party member.
I felt like most of my time was spent in places that were once good. I remember being stunned when I first saw images of how Dunstable used to look, how Luton used to look. I just couldn't wrap my head around it.
Again, this is just a woke version of the marble statue accounts on Twitter showing pictures where it's like, wow, look at all the white British people. This is basically just saying, wow, look at the cars that we want to ban under the Greens. Look at all the businesses that are going on that we wanted to tax more than they were being taxed then. That part might not actually necessarily be true if it's the 70s, but still. Yeah, sure, everyone has nostalgia for this, I get it. Where are you going with this again? I don't know what his point is.
So my entire life experience in the UK was a feeling that my country gets worse every single year. It's a country in decline.
Yeah, you've gone through 4 different sections now of saying this. What's your point? Come on.
And like, I cannot lie, after 1 month in Brighton, that feeling that I have always kind of had, it's just completely gone.
Right, so he moves to a place that is famously nice and that, you know, a little bit like areas of London, is only affordable to more affluent people, and now he feels like that he can actually be ambitious again. Great, yeah, I'd like that for most of Britain, actually. Not necessarily to move, though that's probably going to have to happen in an awful lot of cases, but there's certainly areas where, you know, planning permission, say, gets in the way of entrepreneurs making new businesses, things like that. You know, there's people who are taxed out of profits as well, and obviously energy costs is another big one. There's lots of reasons why we can't quite have this. Brighton is its own sort of area because, frankly, it's a big place for tourism. You know, it's a resort town in the south. A lot of people from London like to go there, so that's why it's largely successful. This happened in the Victorian period as well, by the way. A load of resort towns popped up everywhere because city folk who made a lot of money wanted to go on resort holidays. It's that simple. What killed that? Cheap plane travel. That's what killed that.
Brighton, Manchester, Bristol, Edinburgh, London. These are towns that attract young people. Young people go there. They bring new ideas.
Yeah, I'm not being funny here, but as someone from Manchester, everyone's moving away to London, so no. At least I can say it on that point. I'm a bit confused as to why Manchester's been put in there. I don't know many people that think Manchester's particularly up and coming, like Brighton is, but I mean, I guess there we go.
The city feels like it's evolving, changing, moving in a direction. Feels like it's growing, and it feels like there is a shared sense of progress.
Yeah, again, that might be true for the other cities. I don't know people that are saying that about Manchester, to be quite honest with you. I mean, people say some nice things about Manchester's northern quarter, but even going there, from what I understand, is a bit questionable. People, I'll put it this way, the last few times that there's been, you know, old school friend meetups in Manchester, nobody wants to go to central Manchester. It's always, which commuter town should we go to this time? Because that's where the up and coming areas are.
And like, it's not to say none of these towns have problems, right? Brighton, the rent is way too high. Cost of living is fucked.
Well, yeah. Wow, these places are really popular and up and coming. Wow, there's a housing crisis.
There's drugs, lots of people living on the streets. But with all that still being true, there is not a feeling like this place is decaying.
Okay, he's gone back to just talking about Brighton now, because I was going to say, nah, people really feel like Manchester's decaying. I say that as someone who has a lot of friends who live there and family.
There is a visible sign of life and culture, community, and a general sense of shared progress. So what this means for us as a country is that if you're born into a town like Dunstable or many others, if you're fortunate, a lot of young people will move out of their hometown and they will go to one of these places.
I just want to point out, historically, that's not unusual. That still happened. You know, of all 4 of my grandparents, only one of them actually stayed where they were born. One came over from Ireland, and the other 2 came from the south. Why did they do that? Because they moved for work. Everyone does this. Everyone's done this throughout time. I mean, think about it. How many aunties and uncles, say, brothers and sisters, we're quite old now, but how many of them do you know that, you know, say, oh, my auntie lives in Kent, my uncle lives in Cumbria, yeah, my brother and sister moved to London, blah, blah, blah. That's really usual, and it was usual throughout history. There's just this weird mindset from a lot of people that Britain needs to be some sort of museum, a sort of living museum where people don't feel like they have to move. I mean, I've been reading Enoch Powell recently, and even he said at one point, like, of course people have to move for jobs. What are you talking about? We should actually help them move to places where there are jobs, because people want the work for the money, the businesses want the people for the work, and actually it's quite usual for people to move for jobs. And yet for some reason, when we hit the 2000s, everyone just decided actually that's not normal. Yeah, it is.
And when they go to these towns, they're naturally around people with a very similar mentality to them. Similar age, similar cultural references, same music they like, same TV shows they reference.
Yeah, these are exactly the reasons I did not want to move to places like London and Brighton, by the way. Thank you for reminding me.
And I've noticed this my whole life, but in the UK, there's an intense negativity towards young people, particularly young uni students in urban areas.
Well, I mean, to be absolutely fair here, that's probably because young uni students actually do cause a bit of trouble, and beyond that, there's a hell of a lot more than there used to be. You know, it used to be like 5 to 10% of 18 to 21-year-olds would go to university. Now it's half of them. And by the way, that's part of the housing crisis problem. You know, you have to have rental properties for hundreds of thousands of people to come over just so that they can go to university. And the answer from the Greens is basically, oh, have everyone go to university. Why not? And then beyond that, I'm not being funny, but how often are university students or activists who've just come out of uni are on TV and making fools of themselves? You know, again, this is the point of this video. He's just embarrassed that he didn't go to uni, had some opinions that university students don't appreciate, and now he's trying to make up for it. That's the point of this video. Sorry, I've gone through an hour now. I'm leaving it there and leaving part 2 till next time, but he's not really made a point. He's made some observations that I do agree with. But realistically here, what's his whole point? Oh yeah, by the way, I now agree with some neo-Marxism. And then going through, I didn't used to believe in this because I was ambitious and wanted to make my own money. I do that now, by the way, and managed to afford moving to Brighton. But realistically, I should have just gone to uni instead. Like, what the hell are you talking about? You've ended up with the exact same political positions as people who are at uni by not going there, because at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is catch up with this experience of uni that you've missed. And that's probably why you love Brighton, because in your mind, this is what going to uni is like. And to be fair to him, it is a bit. You don't have many responsibilities, if any. Let's face it, if you fail your degree, you can still do well in life. My brother's a perfect example of that. And yeah, an awful lot of them are quite bohemian, let's say. Oh, let's go clubbing. Oh, there's this event going on that a load of other students are going to. Yes, it's all very left-wing. Oh, I'm going to be an edgy and a Marxist. Hell, I remember driving through Aberystwyth last summer, and there were like 3 separate communist parties out with all their flags trying to get people to join them at the university. And this is basically all he's missing. This is basically a man's cry for help to want to rediscover what he should have been doing at 18 to 21. But he missed all that, and that makes this all quite cringe. But you are kind of able to do that in Brighton because it's largely acceptable in Brighton. Which is fine if that's what he wants to do, but, you know, not everyone has that ideal. And, you know, as I say, I'm perfectly happy with the rest of the country being able to actually have a decent economy and do the things they want to do, not necessarily in the same way as Brighton. You know, if they want to be right-wing and very traditional, I think they should be able to be. There's plenty of places that want to do that, but it's just quite hard to afford and people keep having to move away. And that is going to end up killing some towns, which is just the nature of, well, human development, I suppose we can call it, societal development. Others will survive. But at the moment we don't actually have that, but I don't think he's ready for the conversation that an awful lot of our towns are basically only alive because of the ridiculous benefit system we have. You know, a lot of university towns only exist because student loans give such a massive grant to a bunch of kids who end up going there and keep the economy going. And barely any of them are going to pay it back. It just doesn't make sense. Well, no, sorry, it does make sense because it's happening. The problem is that it's not sustainable. It doesn't make long-term economic sense, I should have said. Anyway, I'm going to leave this part there. We'll get into why there needs to be a massive defence of students when really I think there needs to be a hell of a lot less of them because there's no way we're affording student loans. And why being edgy at 18 with no responsibility is a recipe for just the worst type of person you know. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Thank you all very much for watching. On Saturday we will have Wolves of Westminster and then Laughing at the Guardian, and Deus Ex continues next Wednesday. Videos out as and when I can make them. If you enjoy what I do, subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment. Beyond that, do leave super chats, super thanks, and of course become a channel member. Right, with that, thank you all very much for watching. Until next time, goodbye.